You ever have one of those days where you get on a plane, just hoping to be nobody, and by the time you step off, every stranger in the country knows your name? Yeah, that happened to me. The sky outside was just this endless patchwork of Kansas farmland, stretching on, and there I was, seat 13F, forehead pressed to the glass, trying to forget that I used to wear a uniform, trying to just be Sarah for a minute, not the woman whose call sign started more rumors than facts. Let me back up a sec. For the first time in 18 months, I wasn't in Air Force Blues, no name tag, no rank on my sleeve. My sister had given me this Navy sweater for Christmas, and it felt strange, almost too soft, like I hadn't earned comfort yet after Bagram and all those desert nights. But that's the thing about old habits. Even out of uniform, you sit straight, you keep your hands just so, you check the exits before your brain even registers you're doing it. General Hayes, my boss, my mentor, probably the only person who could order me to go on leave sheet, said, "Martinez, if I see you in my office before May, I'll have you escorted to the nearest beach." I believed her, so here I was, United Flight 847, just another passenger, no insignia, no Phoenix, just a tired daughter heading home to check on her mother. Nobody in that crowded Boeing knew or cared who I used to be, but flight attendants noticed things. This woman, Jennifer Walsh, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes and that steady energy people get from years of holding hands through turbulence. She clocked me before I ever said a word. The way she poured coffee, perfect at 35,000 feet. You could tell she'd seen it all, and yet she still cared. "Something like that?" she asked, after catching me scanning the cabin like I couldn't turn it off. "Air Force," I finally admitted, quieter than I meant, but she just nodded, leaned in, told me her husband did 22 years in the Navy. They're the look people give you when they get at the worry, the years missed, the things you don't talk about. "Thank you for your service, ma'am," she whispered, like it was just between us. I smiled just a little. Around me, life went on. The businessman beside me, Robert, according to his Amex, was buried in quarterly projections, muttering into his Bluetooth. Across the aisle, a young mom wrangled her twin boys, their dad clearly just back from some deployment, judging by the military ID and that kind of exhaustion you only see in people who finally feel safe again. Behind us, college kids were laughing about nothing, probably planning spring break, the biggest worry in their world, a delayed connection. Not one of them knew who I was or what I'd done. That was exactly how I wanted it. You'd think, after all I'd been through, I could just relax, but the truth is, normal feels like a distant memory. I try to let my shoulders drop, try to remember what it felt like to hear laughter without thinking about where the nearest cover was. And for a few minutes, as Kansas slid by outside, I did. I started to believe I could just be another face in the crowd, a woman on her way home, nothing special. But you know how life works, right? Just when you think you're out, it drags you back in. The first sign was a vibration, so faint you'd swear you imagined it, but every nerve in my body was wired to notice things like that. My eyes snapped open. Checked the time. 3:47 p.m., 2 hours into a 5-hour flight. The vibration was steady, off rhythm, not turbulent, something deeper, mechanical. I braced a hand against the window. That's when a flashback started. Kandahar, the sound of hydraulics giving out. I looked around, but everyone else was lost in their lives, phones, books, kids, nobody else felt it. But I knew. Then it got worse. The subtle thrum became a shudder. Drinks jumped in cups. The businessman frowned, annoyed, but Maria, the mom across the aisle, her eyes darted around, pulling her boys close. She felt it too, the way mothers do. Then came the captain's voice, you know that everything's fine, folks, tone telling us to buckle up due to minor technical difficulties. My blood went cold. I'd used those words myself when my jet was on fire over enemy territory, and there's nothing minor about them. The shaking got violent. Bins rattled, laptops slammed shut. People started to realize something was really, really wrong. Suddenly, there was this grinding sound, metallic, deep in the belly of the plane, like the earth itself was twisting metal apart. I counted the seconds, 3, and in those 3, I worked through a dozen worst-case scenarios. None were good. The word emergency cut through the cabin like a gunshot. Masks dropped. People screamed. I saw panic spread like fire in tall grass. Parents fighting to get masks on kids. The businessman hyperventilating, college kids suddenly silent. That calm that comes after the first wave of terror, that's when everyone realizes this is real. But my mind had shifted gears. All those years of training, 100 combat missions, they take over. I diagnosed the failure. Hydraulics gone, controls fighting, pilots probably wrestling 180,000 pounds of metal with little more than muscle and prayer. The plane pitched down, not like a routine descent, no. This was uncontrolled, gravity grabbing us, the ground coming up too fast. I looked out the window and saw the Colorado landscape rushing closer. And for a second, I felt powerless, just a passenger, not the one holding the stick. But that wasn't going to last. Through the chaos, Jennifer, the flight attendant, was everywhere at once, checking masks, trying to project calm while the whole plane dissolved into fear. But she kept glancing at me. I caught her wrist. "Jennifer," I said, steady as I could. "I need to talk to the captain." She started with the script, "Stay seated, keep your mask on," but I cut her off. "I'm a pilot. Air Force. I've been here before." She hesitated, but as the plane shook again, she made a decision. Handed me the key, led me up the aisle. You ever see a cockpit in crisis? It's not chaos. It's deadly focus. Captain Thompson and First Officer Chun were locked in, sweat on their brows, running emergency checklists, voices clipped and efficient. I slid into the jump seat, assessed the panels, and started talking. "You've lost primary hydraulics, secondaries failing. You're getting maybe 20% control. You're fighting this bird with differential thrust, aren't you?" Their heads snapped up. The skepticism faded. I saw the recognition. "How do you know?" Thompson asked. "Because I've flown home with no hydraulics, under fire, in a jet with my name on the nose. We need a military field, long runway, crash cruise ready." "Denver's too far," Chun replied. "Closest is Buckley Space Force Base. 18 minutes. I shook my head. "We don't have 18. That's when I went full Phoenix. Denver Center, United 847. Colonel Sarah Martinez, USAF. Call sign Phoenix, assisting flight crew. Request immediate vector, full emergency." The silence that followed told me everything. Across the region, air traffic control centers, military bases, everyone was listening, everyone knew the legend. The responses came fast. Military scrambling F-22s to escort, commanders calling in from Langley, the Pentagon waking up. Old friends, former students, ground crews from a dozen bases, all suddenly tuned to our frequency, holding their collective breath. But here's the twist, the part that still gets me this crisis wasn't just about one plane. As word spread, the whole military aviation community rallied. At bases from Nevada to Germany, pilots paused. Maintainers gathered, radios tuned in. People I'd trained, commanders who trusted me with impossible missions, kids who joined up because of some story they heard about Phoenix. This wasn't just about 127 people on a broken Boeing, it was about every person who'd ever looked up at the sky and wondered if today was their day to make a difference. As the F-22s found us, slipping into formation like guardian angels, I worked the radios, coordinated with air traffic, asked for the runway at Denver to be cleared, every crash truck ready. "This approach is going to be unconventional," I said. Kevin Rodriguez, the fighter escort, just replied, "Copy Phoenix. We're with you." And over the radio, I heard updates from Cheyenne Mountain, Nellis, Buckley, even retired pilots in Arizona, listening and praying. The world was watching now, not just passengers on United 847, but thousands who'd worn the uniform, civilians who'd flown with me or learned from me, families who'd prayed through deployments. Social media was exploding. Hashtags with my call sign. Stories about missions nobody should have survived. And inside the plane, Maria, the mom, with the twins, started telling passengers who I was. The pilot helping is Air Force, a real hero. Robert, the businessman, passed it on to the college kids, who called me a legend. For a second, I felt the weight of expectation, but more than that, I felt the trust of a community and nation counting on me. The approach, nothing in the manual covered what we were about to do. I told Captain Thompson, "We're coming in fast, 180 knots, no speed breaks, manual everything." "Lisa, call out our airspeed." "Mike, trust the physics, not your instincts. Flare at 50 feet shallow. He nodded, white-knuckled but steady. Down below, the runway was lined with every emergency vehicle Denver could muster. Lights flashing in the dusk, helicopters circling, news crews filming from distant concourses. Then, that quiet before the storm in the cabin. People held hands, strangers prayed together. Jennifer, the flight attendant, made the announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, the pilot assisting us is Colonel Sarah Martinez, call sign Phoenix, one of the most distinguished in military aviation. We are in exceptional hands. You could have heard a pin drop. Final approach runway 16 are 1,000 feet, 185 knots good, I said, my mind running years of training in split seconds. Flare now, Mike, gentle pressure, let her settle. The wheels touched down, smoother than you'd expect for a bird that almost didn't make it. But we weren't out of the woods. Full reverse, Lisa call out speeds. Down the runway we thundered, emergency vehicles pacing us. 60, 50, 40. Finally, the Boeing groaned to a stop, just 800 yards from the end. The silence in the cockpit was thunderous, then applause, cheers, sobs from the cabin behind us. Mike looked at me, voice shaking. You didn't just help us land. You saved every soul on this plane. I smiled, told him, you did the flying, I just gave you a nudge. Lisa, the first officer, just shook her head. Ma'am, with all due respect, that was the most extraordinary flying I've ever seen. When we opened the doors, the world rushed in. Military personnel lined up on the tarmac. Not just officials, but old friends, students, crews from every corner of my life. Kevin Rodriguez, the F-22 pilot, saluted. Maria brought her twins over to thank me. Robert just wanted a handshake. The college kids begged for a selfie. And Danny, an 8-year-old, asked if I'd sign his boarding pass. I knelt down, looked him in the eyes. Heroes are just ordinary people who do what needs doing when others are counting on them. Remember that. You see, the thing is I got on that plane, just wanted to disappear, but life had other ideas. I was reminded that service isn't something you put on with a uniform. It's a choice you make every time someone needs you. As I stood there, surrounded by people who'd once been strangers but now shared a story none of us would ever forget, I realized maybe heroes aren't born in battle, but in those moments when the world needs you most and you answer, no matter the cost. So let me ask you, in moments of crisis, who do you want to be? The person waiting for someone else to act, or the one who stands up when it matters? Share your thoughts below. What would you have done? Is bravery about training, or is it simply about showing up, no matter the odds? Let's talk about what it means to do the right thing, even when no one's watching or when suddenly everyone is.